close out the year and start off the new one, I'm answering your questions that all you guys sent in. And no, YouTube order, I will not stop telling you to go fuck yourself for the new year. And as you guys can probably tell through my voice, I'm still sick, still under the weather, still have all this nasal congestion and all that stupid shit. So yes, my voice does sound a little different up in this motherfucker. However, I'm not coughing and sneezing as much as it was last time. Now I just have a little bit of a sore throat up in this motherfucker. But anyway, this time around, I have far less questions to answer, which is a good thing. Because at times, answering 200 questions is a little daunting and time consuming. But this time around, the shit was a lot more manageable when I had one question per person. I still have the same amount of people asking questions, but without asking multiple questions, I was able to get a nice number this time around. Now, in prior sessions, I would save the controversial shit until the final videos, and I'm gonna do the same here. The number one most asked question is actually going to be saved until the final video, and it was asked in a whole bunch of different ways. I think it was about 8 different questions or so, or something like that. But it was all about the Ferguson, Missouri, and New York City cases of police officers killing unarmed black men in the aftermath of both cases. So since that was the most popular question, I will save it as the final question in the whole damn session, and that will be in the final video. Now, at this point, if you haven't asked a question yet, it's too fucking late. No, really, each time I do these, someone realizes that they forgot to send in a question, and they write one in the comments section, or they send me another personal message after the session has already been closed. However, all the answers have already been recorded, and this is just an intro, as well as all the subsequent intros, after I've already answered all the questions. So, there will be no more questions answered after this. If you didn't get it in by now, you snooze, you lose. That's the best way I can put this motherfucker. But anyway, without any other further delays, let's get busy and start right into this question. First up, from Asgardian Dagger. I'm gonna say Dagger, right? Dagger looks like it? I don't fucking know. In that wall of text, he wants to know, considering how shitty this year was in producing actual good games, how do you think gaming is going to develop within a decade, 2006, 2016, somewhere, I don't know. In terms of single player, multiplayer market, franchise quality, genre, blah, 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 blah. Basically, he wants to know how games are gonna be fixed and shit like that. And on a side note, he may remember me in the comments section. No, I don't remember anybody. Hey man, I just can't, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember anybody, man. So anyway, getting back into your question, you know, the past 2 years have been a bit of an anomaly for the gaming industry, and you have to assume a big part of that was due to the console generation switching over. You know, last year was an awesome year. You know, BioShock Infinite, Grand Theft Auto 5, Last of Us, all the games that took 3+ years to develop, all focused on specific consoles. They only had to produce for 2 consoles and PC, or 1 console in the case of The Last of Us. This year, we're seeing the rush of games to get on both generations of consoles, and the overall quality has been shitty. There have been very few games that have spanned both console generations that managed to put out a good product across all the platforms they were on. A big part of that is publishers are wanting to rush out content to avoid all the future competition. I mean, just look at the list. Watch Dogs was nowhere near the advertised product. Destiny was incomplete. Titanfall was incomplete. But meanwhile, games like The Division, Bloodborne, The Witcher, they were all delayed because studios are going through the growing pains of the different consoles. Now, if I were to take a guess, I have a few predictions on gaming in the future. None of these predictions are things people will want to hear. Number one, I have a feeling the big 3 publishers are going to buy out the competition. I just have this feeling between EA, Activision, and Ubisoft, they're going to purchase as many studios and competitors as possible, and that includes Take-Two Interactive. And the main reason is that games take much longer to produce the quality we want. Activision learned that with Call of Duty. EA noticed that with Battlefield and rushing Battlefield 4 and then having to delay Hardline. Delays are becoming all too common because developers realize it takes longer to make a better game. That being said, it means it takes more money to make a better game, and that without games being produced for a while, you're going to be making a whole lot less money. Instead of EA having 10 studios to produce 3 games per year, I'm just using this as an example, they'll want 20 studios, but they'll maybe only push out 5 good games in the year. That way, they're spacing out the content so that money's coming in, and that studios that are taking their time with games are making sure that it's being done right. So my prediction is that EA and Activision, and to a certain extent Ubisoft, they're going to buy out a number of smaller studios, that they're going to enter partnerships, sort of like we saw with Bungie and Activision, so that they have more studios working on things, but that they can give each studio a little bit more time in the long run to be able to put out a better product. And of course, the other counter that we're going to see is that you're going to have to expect a lot more DLC heavy games similar to fucking Destiny. Oh man, I can tell you right now, that looks like it's going to be the future of the games. Basically what Destiny did this year, they released an incomplete game saying that, oh, down the road, it's going to be better. Yeah, right, fuck you, that was bullshit. My guess is, with the way games are being produced now, we're going to see exactly what happened with Destiny, considering how much money it made. Games are going to put out a shell of a product, or an almost complete product, say like 95% or so. And then the final 5% is going to be your first DLC pack, and then after that, it's going to be all the newly developed DLC afterwards. AVX Gamer wants to know, is Vladimir Putin the next Hitler with the way he's antagonizing NATO into starting a war with Russia? You know, normally I would save this question all the way to the end, but you know what? Fuck it, we're just going to answer that shit now. I don't think the world will ever see another Hitler, because his regime was based off of bigotry and hate. And of the major developed countries that we have in the world, they would not elect someone like that. Or in the case of China and Russia, they basically say, okay, you're the fucking leader and you're just going to stay like that. They don't have no open elections up in this motherfucker. But anyway, man, besides the bigotry and hate, Vladimir Putin's logic is following some of Hitler's old logic. And that's the comparison that most people are making. When Hitler started antagonizing Europe, it was to defend foreign living Germans in other countries. That's similar to Putin's logic of annexing Crimea because he wanted to protect Russians living there. When Hitler was isolated, his logic was to lash out and be defiant of other countries. Putin is doing the same. As opposed to working with other countries, he's letting them sanction him and say, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to be as defiant as humanly possible. But the biggest similarity between the countries was that when they were failing economically, Hitler ignored it, which led to the downfall of his armies because they didn't have the supplies. Putin is ignoring Russians' economic issues, which is going to send Russia into a recession by the summer of 2015 if he continues to be stubborn. He isn't mass killing people yet. He hasn't fully invaded an entire country yet, although the Ukraine is just on the brink of an invasion, and he's certainly not promoting a master race like Hitler did. So, he hasn't gone completely down that path yet. But his policies, his stubbornness, is basically going to be the same downfall the way it was with Hitler. And it's just a matter of time until the ruble devalues way too much to keep his country out of certain debt. It's the same way that Germany was isolated years ago when Hitler was in charge, and now Vladimir Putin is in charge of Russia and he's basically isolating himself. Ultimately, he backed himself into a corner because he's fucking arrogant. But as long as he's not burning people alive, he's no Hitler. There is just nobody, absolutely no world leader that would ever be as inhumanly cruel as that motherfucker was. Shut It Down 12 wants to know, will you ever do more snowboarding videos from your helmet cam? I would like to, but as I get older, my time on the mountains lessens each year, from money and time to the recovery period takes a bit longer. I'm not as fucking young as I used to be. So it's not always feasible. When I had my helmet cam in Whistler, I was there for a full 4 days of riding, but I don't plan on going on any long trips like that for a while, basically to conserve money and shit like that. So if anything, it would most likely be a day trip to one of the local mountains here in the Northeast, whether it's Camelback, Mountain Creek, whatever the hell it is. So I would like to, but I can't guarantee that I'll be able to get some footage up for you guys. Happy Dude 12able wants to know, would you rather be able to read minds or have your own private island and live with Morgan Freeman? The fuck I want to live with Morgan Freeman for? Now, if you said Adriana Lima or Jessica Alba, that's a different story. So I'd much rather read minds than be stuck on an island with some old fucking man. I don't know where the hell you came up with that idea. But basically, unless you're putting me there with a hot chick, the answer is always going to be I'd rather have the ability to read minds. Next question, and it comes with a phonetic pronunciation. Adul! Thank God, motherfucker gave me a pronunciation. Adul777 wants to know, what the flying fuck happened to music in the past decade or so? One word. Napster. People may not want to believe it and will argue with me over this, but Napster killed music. Years ago, when the only way you could get music was buying the shit, Napster came along and made MP3 file sharing a shitload easier. I mean, think about it. Before 1999, we had music coming out all the time, and the music industry was booming. In particular, the hip-hop industry, in particular when you had the whole Biggie and Tupac beef before they all died, Jay-Z started coming up and making records and shit like that. West Coast was still all about gangster rap, so there was tons of music coming out. But when record labels and artists saw that their music was being copied and shared, that people started file sharing instead of buying music, all of a sudden, you started fucking with their money. When CD sales started to plummet, artists and publishers started noticing that trend. And they went through all those legal battles to shut down file sharing sites, including Napster among them. When the technology became available to share music, that's when profits from buying CDs stopped. And if profits aren't as high as they were, you can't go giving out contracts to just any old musician. And the musicians that were actually talented realized that the money was no longer in making music, the money was in doing concerts. You didn't need to have 4 to 5 to 10 albums to put on a concert, you just needed a few hit songs and stadiums willing to host your concert tours. By the time iTunes came around and started changing to $1 per song, or whatever the fuck it was, the damage was done. Musicians realized that the millions of dollars prior to Napster was no longer going to be available. Record labels realized they weren't going to be able to get a huge cut from CD sales, and they had to stoop down to iTunes to make money. So longtime artists stopped making music, and they started acting, they started dancing, they started doing other shit like reality TV shows. It's why you see people like Eve doing TV shows, or Steve Van Zandt on The Sopranos instead of touring. It's why people like J-Lo went to American Idiot to be a judge instead of attempting her own shitty singing on her own. Well, god damn it, thank God that bitch doesn't sing anymore. Oh man, she's fucking terrible. But I mean, just look at the other artists. Harry Connick Jr., Adam Levine, Run DMC, Ozzy Osbourne, all turned away from music to television because there was more money in being an asshole in front of millions of viewers instead of using your actual talent to make music. Music started to decline from Napster and basically bombed out by the time iTunes started selling their shit for $1. It's why you have so many artists nowadays cater to teeny boppers who now use their parents' credit cards to order songs online. It's pathetic, actually, and it's why music is so fucking terrible. Napster was great when the technology came out, but essentially it destroyed the music industry 15 years later because it became so easy to share files that basically all the music lost its value over time. Wither125 wants to know, should esports be considered a sport? If yes or not, why? No, 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 hell fucking no. Video games is not a sport. It's exactly what it says it is, video games. And this is what irks me about the definition of sports these games, in that anything considered a competition is now a sport. Fishing is considered a sport. Archery is considered a sport. Fucking chess is considered a sport. And at this point, fucking midget tossing and fart contests would be considered sports. This isn't so much a knock against video games and competitive gaming. This is a knock against recreation in general being considered a sport. And I really think there needs to be a definitive distinction between a true sport and what people consider recreation. I think the term competitive sports or professional sports should be different from the term competitive recreation. Because let's get real for a second. Football players and video gamers are not the same fucking thing, nor should they be classified as the same fucking thing. And if you want any proof of that, would you call a video game player an athlete? No. You would call a baseball player an athlete though, but the biggest distinction is this. In all sports, cheating occurs, right? It happens, and there's always some way someone will find a way to cheat. However, in professional sports, it's usually performance-enhancing drugs. Steroids, sprays, pills, whatever the fuck. What performance-enhancing drug would a competitive gamer take? Mountain Dew? Red Bull? Hot Pockets, motherfucker? The absurdity that video games is now considered a sport shows that we need a better definition for sports and recreation, and of course, I have the definition. Sports should be classified as any single or team event in which you physically alter the outcome of the event against your opponent. And by physical, I mean your body has to have some shared contact with an opponent to be considered a sport. Football, feetball, as much as I hate calling these fucking flopping bitches athletes, by my definition, feetball is a sport. Hockey, baseball, volleyball, tennis. In all these sports, my physical prowess, my training, my conditioning, my body affects the outcome of the competition. This travels all the way down the line to all the random shit that people will play. Sumo wrestling, highlight, boxing, cricket, whatever the fuck. Competitive recreation is any competition in which you indirectly affect the outcome of the event. Track and field would fall in line with this. My race, my run in the 100-meter dash has no bearing on your race. I can run by myself in a 100-meter dash, and you can run by yourself, and we could pick a winner based on the best time that we both ran. Same with swimming or NASCAR. Racing against the clock is indirectly playing against your opponent. Any judged competition like snowboarding, ice skating, gymnastics is indirectly affecting the outcome of the event. Other recreations would be bowling, golf, hunting. You do not physically affect your opponent or opponents with your body. Now, all of these take skill. There is no question about that, similar to video games. But your skill is not physical prowess. In video games, you do not need to be the tallest, fastest, most muscular, highest jumping, best running motherfucker. Your skills rely on the coordination of your eyes, brain, and fingers, and at no point do you physically change your opponent's game. Your character in a game indirectly affects the outcome. So the overall answer is that I would never classify video games as sport, and the problem is the definition of sports should be changed to begin with. I think the whole sports terminology needs to be revamped because shit like swimming, curling, chess, video games, sailing, equestrian, whatever the fuck, are not in the same vein as baseball, hockey, racquetball, tennis, and all that other good shit. So the bottom line, video games is not a fucking sport. Same way racing should not be a sport. Same way swimming should not be a sport. Synchronized swimming. All of that shit should not be considered a sport. It should be considered competitive recreation. Next question from SpiderVenom2000. If you have the ability to bring back anyone you want from the dead, but at a cost of sacrificing 2 or 3 or just one major douchebag of your choice, who would you bring back? And what I mean by anyone, I'm not talking like sacrificing 2 assholes to bring back like a family member or a friend. I'm talking someone who is famous, like celebrities, comedians, directors, unless one of your family members or friends are famous for being something. And in his example, he would personally sacrifice Kim Kardashian to bring back George Carlin. Well, first off, I would go one step further and I would kill off the entire Kardashian family to satisfy that part. Oh man, throw in Kanye West as well, and you have the perfect group to get rid of, and I'll be happy with that shit. Now, as to who to bring back, that's tricky. See, I'm an evil fuck, and my first thought would be to bring back Jesus, because that would cause all kinds of shit. Was he real? Was he legit? Can he perform some of his magic tricks in front of me and all that crap? Because he already resurrected one time, motherfucker. So now bringing him back would just fuck over all of God's plan and all the people that believe in that hocus pocus. But that would cause all kinds of shit, because then I would have to do it for all the religions if I did it for just one. So Muhammad, King Solomon, Moses, whatever the fuck. So if I could bring back one person, it'd be Einstein. Just to show him how badly human civilization has deteriorated. Oh man, bring back the world's smartest man at the exchange of the world's garbage. I think that's a fair trade-off, don't you guys think? Next up, the guy with no gamer tag. What do you think of social expectations towards men and women? Now, what the fuck? Is this for like a midterm paper or some shit? Motherfucker, it sounds like I'm answering a question to an essay paper or some shit like that. Now, I've said this from the start. I've said this in a couple of videos by now. Society is much harder on women than it is men. It is much harder being a woman than a man, and part of that is that men have superiority complexes, the alpha male syndrome. We need to be in charge. We need to be the ones that dictate order and control, and part of that is subjecting women to unnecessary standards such as body image, how to act, what happens when they do things that men do yet are perceived completely different. These are all part of the alpha male syndrome. I mean, just look at some examples. If a guy puts on a few pounds and he's overweight, not obese, but just a little out of shape, do people care? No. Do people judge? Of course not. But when a woman is a few pounds overweight, oh, she's fat. It's an unfair standard. If a guy sleeps around, he's considered a player. But if a girl does it, she's a slut. How's that fair? Player has to sleep with someone, doesn't he? Well, unless he's Bill Cosby. Oh man, I had to get the Bill Cosby joke in. I'm surprised nobody actually asked me a Bill Cosby question. Whatever, man, I'm not gonna get into that shit. Bottom line, men have different standards than women because men have always dictated so. Women have always been seen as the inferior gender and will always be considered the inferior sex because stubborn men will never view them as equals, let alone allow them to be their equals. Forsaken King 90 wants to know, will you be doing a rant on DC Universe Online for either the PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4? And the answer is no, because I don't have the game. I know it exists, I just never ventured into it, so I don't know anything about the motherfucker to actually rant on it. Steroid Magikarps, what the fuck kind of name is that? Do you ever think humanity will find intelligent life on other planets in the universe? I'll be honest, I know there must be intelligent life somewhere because they've done everything they can to avoid us. Listen, man, space is an enormous fucking place. I can't imagine we are the only life form in the entire universe. I mean, the odds of that are just so absurdly low that we could be the only life form. I mean, probability-wise, there has to be another form of life somewhere else in this entire universe. Humans don't even know how large the fucking universe it is. We believe we've seen less than 1% of the entire universe. Now think about that for a second. Less than 1%. And in that less than 1%, we found a number of Earth-viable planets. In other words, places where we think life could actually exist. And that's just less than 1% of the universe. I'm telling you right now, there has to be some life out there. I mean, my guess is that if we don't kill ourselves off first with wars, pollution, overpopulating, we'll locate something in space that proves there are other lives in other planets. Whether it's a satellite, whether it's other forms of life, signals from outer space or whatever the fuck, signals that are looking for us, trying to look for other forms of intelligent life. But obviously, due to technology limits, it's not like we're going to do this in our lifetime. Chances are, if humans are still around 400, 500 years from now, we'll have a chance. But I can't imagine that in all that infinite space, we're the only ones alive in the entire universe. Alright, so we'll stop things here after the first video, but like I said, guys, we're going to be going through all this week, answering all your questions. So if you didn't see them today, there's a good chance you're going to see them in the upcoming days. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And stay tuned for the next videos, which will answer everyone's questions throughout the week.